Hey fans, every week on our show we talk to a fantastic person about the thing they are a fan of. In doing this, we hope that our conversation with our guest will encourage our listeners to go check out and experience the thing we're talking about. However, being that we are a family-friendly show, we wanted to issue a warning for this week's episode. While this conversation is polite and family-friendly, the topic we are talking about is not. So we wanted to let you know in advance that if you do go check it out, you will encounter extreme vulgarity, crass language, and insensitive humor. Still, we do hope that you will enjoy this conversation and broaden your perspective on things that are out there.
Welcome back to Fantastic People. I'm Christian.
And I'm Regan. And here with us today is a very special guest, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. So not Pensacola.
Not Pensacola.
But he...
not originally from Pensacola either.
No.
That's an odd one for us.
So here with us today is Colten Barnaby. Colten and his wife, Natalie, are in Chicago, Illinois. And this is important to note. His wife is in her final year at Northwestern University School of Law.
Very impressive.
Congratulations. I'm just going to say that on being
much smarter than I am.
Yeah. And sticking and being there, supporting her through that. That's just cool.
Yeah.
That alone is an accomplishment worth mentioning. So good job. Anyway, Colten is the founder and CEO of Barnaby and Associates Financial and a regional vice president at Primerica Financial Services. Colten and Natalie also attend City Church Chicago, where Colten is a part of the Life Groups team. So, man, Colten, you got a lot going on. So glad you could take a moment to be with us today. How's it going?
Yeah, hey, I'm doing great. It's good to be here. And, not only have I never lived in Pensacola, Florida, I've never been to Pensacola, Florida. I wasn't sure it was real until I met you guys.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a real place.
There used to be a billboard when you drove into the city that said Pepsi Cola, Florida.
Really?
Yep. And that's about the only cool thing that ever happened here. And I hate Pepsi. I just thought that was a fun billboard.
That's not the only look. A lot of cool people, which we've noticed, have come out.
That's true. We've had some fantastic people.
Wow. Yep. Anyway,
I did that. I dropped that.
We did.
I'll pick it back up again. I'll use it later.
Yeah.
But Colten, man, this is the first time we've met. So tell me a bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
Yeah. Hey, so it's good to be here with you guys. Currently, like Reagan said, living in Chicago, Illinois, moved here a couple years ago for my wife to attend school. And like you noted, she is smarter than me. She's not the only person that's smarter than me. She's just the one I see every day. But from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania originally, grew up in North Philly in a neighborhood called Kensington. My dad pastors a little church there that my grandfather and grandmother planted 62 years ago. So our family's been in the same neighborhood doing ministry for a long time. And moved, was the first person in my family to kind of go to a non-Bible college, like a real college, and went to Oklahoma and met my wife. We got married. We've been married it'll be 8 years this May. We're having our first child.
Congrats.
The due date is the day after our anniversary date. So that's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Double congrats.
Thanks, man. Really, really excited about it. And moved out here to Chicago a couple years ago and just, loving life.
What's interesting is while most of our guests are from Pensacola, I think Philly is probably number 2 because you would be the third guest we've had from Philly.
Really?
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is odd. I just was thinking about it now. I'm like, it's probably our second.
Truthfully, I thought by now we would have broken out to like more places, but somehow we just keep hanging out in the same part of the country.
We planted roots.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. I don't really have strong feelings about Philadelphia. I've never been, but what was it like growing up there?
Well, man, so Kensington is is a very poor neighborhood. New York Times recently did an article calling it the Walmart of heroin. It's,
sounds like a tough place to grow up.
To be proud of,
Okay.
It's a very just desperate place. In a long time ago, it was a blue collar area, a lot of factories, a lot of textile factories, and just with
Mm.
automation and then further industrialization, globalization, jobs going overseas, it just kind of fell apart in the 70s and 80s, and just became a pretty rough place. The police commissioner Larry Krasner, pardon me, the DA Larry Krasner in Philly decided several years back to stop prosecuting drug arrests in Kensington because it was just too much, and it was leading to too much strain
Wow.
on the police force, and it was leading to extra violence. And so it's kind of an open air drug market where you can go there and a cop could see you shooting up heroin on the sidewalk. And literally, you walk down the street, people are shooting up broad daylight. They won't arrest you.
Wow.
People are selling drugs openly, shouting what they have, like you're in a third world country.
Wow.
And it's a pretty rough place. So there's a lot of good work to be done there ministry wise, but a lot of desperate, a lot of hurting people. So growing up there was like that. was being around that atmosphere, that culture. But even though and we did real like incarnational ministry is what my family believes in, which just means we didn't drive in from the suburbs to minister to all the poors every.
Yeah.
Like we were poor with them. We lived there. There's not a lot of money to be made in that kind of a church community. So we lived in Section 8 housing. We lived on WIC. Our church ran a food bank, and we made sure that we followed the rules of the food bank and only got as much as everybody else got. And so it was something you're poor growing up when poor people are bringing you leftovers from their dinner to feed your family. And that's how it was. A lot of times without hot water, a lot of times the electricity shut off. So it was tough, but it taught me a lot. But I got to say this, as bad as we had it, I mean, I had it so much better than most of the other people in the area because I had two parents in my home who loved me and believed in me and taught me to believe in myself and tried to get me out of the city as much as possible to get different experiences. And sadly, a lot of the people I grew up with never left. Some people have never left Philly, but I know people have never left Kensington. They've never been to downtown Philly.
Wow.
They've never been on a highway. We live 2 miles from I-95. And so it gave me a lot of perspective. It caused me to grow up, pretty humble, but grew up there until I was about 16 or 15 and a half. I failed my junior year of high school. I was a couple of years ahead. But I missed 97 days of school. There was a year where I didn't go to school. I just went to the playground and played basketball and smoked weed with other kids. And when this boiled down to it, my dad made me move to Texas. And I ended up living in Texas in a suburb of Dallas called McKinney. Graduated high school there, redid my junior year, did my senior year. And met a guy that became great friends with named Mike Nelms. And he was going to the school Oral Roberts University up in Tulsa. And I never considered going to college. Nobody from where I'm from went to college, right? If anything, I thought maybe I'd go to Bible college, but never like a real university where you could study something, nursing or business or something. And so I went with him just on a lark on a college weekend trip. And he was like, put in your application. I didn't think I'd get in, but apparently they'll accept literally anybody. And so I made it. And that's where I met my wife. And that's where the story picked up from there, what I already said.
It's interesting about that. One, it's an incredible story, and thank you for sharing. But you talk about coming from like humble beginnings, kind of reminds me of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure.
We are going to talk about a person, which we don't often do, but we have dabbled in this world before. But today we're going to be discussing Kendrick Lamar.
Yes, big.
So, originally from, I think, Compton, California. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think he's from Compton. Also kind of humble beginnings, now has grown to the superstardom. How did you first experience it? What was your introduction to old Kendrick?
My introduction to Kendrick, and by the way, I'm pretty sure he's from Compton. There's like a little bit of confusion as to whether or not, because his family was from Chicago, So he might have been born in Chicago and moved to Compton when he was like a baby, but they might have moved there to when they were pregnant. But I first found out about Kendrick. I was sitting in the Phoenix Cafe on 11th and Peoria in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is a very specific answer. And I was doing homework, and I was drinking a beer, which at the school I went to, Oral Roberts University, is a very conservative Christian school, will get you kicked out of school. And I had just kind of reached like a fed up point, right? Where I was just like fed up.
I've been there.
I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm going to order a beer at this cafe. I'm going to do my homework. And but I was feeling a little guilty about having the beer. I came from my dad's church is like a holiness Pentecostal church too. So I
don't do it.
Constantly looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, like no TV, women can't wear pants, etc. So sitting there and I'm listening to Spotify, my earbuds in, and man, it was like I was listening, I think, to the top 40 singles on Spotify, and like suddenly through my earbuds, there came a sound from Compton as of a rushing mighty wind. And I heard this voice just confess, I am a sinner who's probably going to sin again. Lord, forgive me. And it was a Kendrick song. And I had never heard of Kendrick Lamar before. I'd never heard his music before. It was the first words I heard. And it resonated so much with me in that moment.
Drinking a
beer, which I don't think is a sin law, but in that moment resonated with me so much. I just started digging in.
Yeah,
that was the first time.
Man, that's again great story.
That's literally, man. I'll tell you, how many episodes have we done? Like 20.
Oh gosh, yeah, 26, 27
by this point, 28. It's weird when we're ahead like this.
Yeah.
That answer right there, I'm gonna tell you, that is why we do what we're doing right now.
I love it.
Yeah,
like that just got to the heart of it all. That's cool, man. That's
well,
super cool.
Again, especially because of like the setting you're in, how you've grown up, the influence you are, and then the specific line speaking to you, kind of the way that it did.
That's awesome.
I am familiar with Kendrick Lamar. I must make a confession here. I only own one Kendrick Lamar album, and it's hard. I don't even know if like purists would count it, which is the Black Panther. It's great. I'm not gonna say, what am I gonna tell you? It's fantastic. I work out to it.
Yeah,
it gets me pumped. But everything I've heard from the guy, I really like. I mean, he's really talented. Reagan, how familiar are you?
I knew the name, and
okay.
I couldn't have told you why I knew his name until I started listening to some stuff today, and I was like, "Oh, Black Panther." Okay,
yeah,
that's why I know his name. Yeah, but I mean, no, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
He's talented. He's super talented. He's the lyrics that I did listen to are raw, right?
Yeah, very real.
Very
like,
real.
You connect with it. Yeah.
And I think what honestly, and I imagine this is part of it for you too, Colten. You can correct me if I'm wrong. What impressed me the most is that I can sit there and listen to a whole bunch of lyrics that would make my mama cry, like in a bad way, in embarrassment. But then also I can hear lyrics that would put her on her knees and put me on my knees, and in a good way, in confession or seeking forgiveness, or I mean, there's just, and not, that was a weird way to say that, but like it's just everything about who he is. He puts it out there. Period. There is no, well, I've got this career that could be impacted if I put this piece of my life out there. Or, oh, these fans over here are going to get ostracized if I talk about this topic. Like, it's just out there for everybody.
He's very honest as an artist. I feel like.
Yeah.
Colten, if I,
honest. That's.
Well, go ahead. No, you're good. Go you first.
I was going to say this honesty is what really drew me to him, because, at the time I grew up listening to a lot of different Christian rappers, right? And I'm not going to diss any of them. A lot of them got a lot of skill and have a lot of great stuff to say, but I was over it, because when I was listening, it felt too instructional. Like they were coming at me like they're a teacher, or they're a pastor, they're teaching doctrine in this song. And when I heard Kendrick, it was like hearing, not listening. It was like listening to the prayers of a regular saint, and not somebody who thinks that they have something to teach you.
Yeah. And probably the prayers of a person that's by themselves, not the prayers of somebody who's in a circle or a crowd with other people listening to those prayers. Because those are different, if we're being honest. So
I kind of to your point where you're talking about, like, if you and I were to sit down and talk, I think you and I find we have a lot in common. I also went to Christian college and got extremely burnt out with it, and did a lot of things that I was not supposed to do while I was there. But one thing that I have really grown to appreciate, I follow a lot of, I would say, reasonable Christian, high-level Christian minds on Twitter. But the one I've really grown to love is like this first-year seminary student who's very open about her struggles with depression. And it's never perfect. You know, it's never like a great biblical answer. It's like, I woke up today and I didn't die. Jesus saves. And that's the kind of, that to me is better than the holiest of teachings I've ever learned. Like that pure, just honesty that, like, hey, it sucks, but I at least tonight I'm going to go to bed and it won't be for the last time. That kind of honesty speaks to me. And I feel like that has been a major draw for Kendrick, is a lot of people feel a lot, they really connect because what he says, they feel it. Like if I'm listening to Kanye and I'm listening to 808 and the Heartbreaks, like I'm not connecting with any of that. It's just snazzy, but that's not the same emotion that gets elicited when I listen to like Kendrick.
Yeah, and Kendrick talks about that in some interviews where he says, because there was 5 mixtapes that he put out before his first studio album, Section 80, came out, and they're not great. Like they're, you can tell he's young, and it's just full of the classic bravado of I've got chains and I'm killing people, and he comments on that and talks about how he had to figure out what he wanted to do with his music, which he wanted to make music for people. Everyday people can't relate to I've got chains and I'm balling out. They're living on welfare or they're struggling to make it week to week. And he said, I want to make music that everybody can listen to and find themselves somewhere in that music. And for me, that's what that was when I heard that, which is, I feel like, an unsuspecting place where it almost felt like I was reading Paul in, like, what is it, Romans 7, I think, where he's like, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do, right? Where, I'm a sinner and I'm probably going to sin again. Lord, forgive me. And there, like you said, it's just, there's rawness there and a lack of pretension that makes you as the listener, or it makes me as a listener feel like I can be vulnerable in how I let the music speak to me.
No, I mean, that's an excellent point. If you had to, Reagan and I, not very experienced with the subject matter, and you've kind of already, done this already, but can you give me like a 30-second, hey, this is what you should check out and why?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I check out from Kendrick is his first studio album, Section 80, which I think came out in about 2011, late 2010 or 2011. It's absolutely phenomenal. And really his biggest hits, if you're going to look at him, his biggest hit albums are everything since then. Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and Damn, which he has increasingly, watching the evolution of this guy as an artist has been insane to watch how with every iteration he's evolved, right, and grown. The guy's won 13 Grammy Awards, 2 American Music Awards, like a bunch of Billboard Awards. Damn was the first album, not only the first rap album, but the first album that wasn't classical or jazz to win a Pulitzer Prize for music.
Wow.
And one of the things that's crazy about his music is it's not, you can't always read it on its face for what it means. It feels left almost open to interpretation on purpose in some aspects, where, like, I mean, there are so many theories regarding so many different aspects of his song where people are arguing online. Like his album, Damn, there's a whole section of fans that believe it's supposed to be listened to backwards from the last track to the first track. And they call this the Blue Album. And it's interesting because it totally changes the orientation of this and the direction of the music from the first. If you listen to it from the beginning to end, it's this very hopeful and inspiring track. If you listen to it from end to beginning, it's the same songs, but it's almost like watching this artist start off with his origin story and become totally frayed out to the point where he's actually killed in the end. Which he's killed in the beginning of the thing, but so yeah, I would start with probably Good Kid, Mad City. A lot of people still think that's his magnum opus, even though it was like his first album that went huge. But Damn is my favorite, and then of course To Pimp a Butterfly was less. It was still hugely commercially successful, went multi times platinum, but there's not really radio hits in it. It didn't really get much radio play. It kind of came out in that time around the Ferguson, everything that was happening in Ferguson, Missouri, after Mike Brown was killed, and really spoke, I think, to a lot of the issues at hand in a way that Kendrick can do this, in a way that is getting him criticized by people who are opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement, not to get political, but on Fox News, where they're literally talking about him. He includes recordings from Geraldo Rivera on the album Damn, talking negatively about him. And then also attacked by people in the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So he can present this stuff in a way, but it's because he's not trying to appease anybody. He's giving his honest thoughts on the issue. And so you're going to piss some people off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I really respect, we keep coming back to this, but just the commitment to being honest and true to himself. I think a lot about when I went to enlist, I had a recruiter who said, "My shtick is that I have no shtick." And I want to be like, that's a shtick. Like that is...
There are no absolutes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I understand now that this is kind of a part of his product, but I'd much prefer that product than a lot of other things that I get. If your shtick is, I'm going to tell you the truth. Well, even if I know it's a shtick, I'd rather you tell me the truth. And I feel like that has really connected a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. Even if they don't always agree kind of to what you're saying, the example used around like criticizing Fox News and being criticized by Black Lives Matter, like everyone, I think anyway, okay, let me backtrack. Not everyone. I think younger people, millennials and younger, want truth more than they want to be appeased. We want things that are real more than we want things that make us feel better. And so I think this is why you're seeing such a large decrease in evangelism in America. It's not because they don't like what the evangelical movement has to say. It's that you look at evangelicals and they don't believe what they have to say. I think you look at something like a little more real and honest, whether it's always culturally acceptable, not so much important as long as it's honest. And I feel like that's where a lot of his, because you're right. I mean, I have heard Kendrick Lamar songs on the radio, but he doesn't get as much radio play as some extremely far more annoying individuals. Because it's not necessarily appeasing. It's not, but it's honest. How do you have a multi-platinum album and you not get a ton of radio play?
Yeah.
You say something people want to hear.
He doesn't need the radio to get his message out there.
Yeah.
For sure.
One thing I did notice, and you can probably speak on this much better than I can, a lot of his music has a kind of a very classic sound to it. Like he seems like to honor a lot of older styles that I feel like we don't hear very often.
Yeah, I got that for sure.
Yeah,
Where does that come from?
Early in life. I mean, so he was named after Eddie Kendricks of the Temptations, right? And he talks a lot about the influence of the music his parents listened to, what that had on him. And then you look at the people he collaborates, people like Thundercat, a lot of jazz musicians that he's linked up with. And I remember an interview with him with Rick Rubin, where he was talking about where he had this realization, and it may have been Snoop Dogg that he was talking to, where Snoop Dogg said, you're not a rap artist, you're a jazz artist, right? And you're right, you hear that so much in his albums. And it's crazy how none of them sound alike. Each really has a unique sound. A lot of people felt like he needed to come out with Good Kid, Mad City 2, basically. And he just wouldn't do it. And I wonder, that can take us to an interesting part of the conversation. Where is Kendrick Lamar? Because Kendrick Lamar put out albums at a pretty consistent clip about like every year and a half to 2 years, right? Every 2 years, the album would drop, and about the half year point in that second year, you'd start getting singles. And we're leaning into our fourth year now with no real Kendrick album, if you don't count Black Panther.
Well, the purists probably don't, but I definitely count Black Panther.
Well, the reason I think the purists, whatever that means, love Black Panther. I think everybody loves the Black Panther album. Is just Kendrick's only on 3 songs on it.
True.
He produced it, so it's like an album that he produced, all 14 tracks. We didn't really do anything, and I wonder how much of him is stuck. A lot of these artists will have hundreds or thousands sometimes of songs that they've written and recorded that are just banked with nowhere for them to go. Last year in January, people who were insiders at his label were putting out interviews talking about how Kendrick's album was done and it was ready to drop. In May, the head of his label, Top Dog, Anthony Top Dog Tiffith, put out a tweet, like, don't worry, King Kendrick is going to return soon, right? That's in May of 2020. And now a lot of people are wondering where it's at. And part of me wonders, you can clearly see that this is somebody who doesn't care about just getting another album out and getting sales and touring. This is somebody who genuinely cares about the product. They will put it out. So far since Section 80, he hasn't put out something that isn't going to be a classic that will stand the test of time forever. There's no throwaway albums, right? Whereas a lot of artists, you can have like a Drake will put out album after album after album, and there'll be a lot of hits on there, be a lot of songs that nobody ever cares about. But Kendrick's never going to put out an album like that, where there's a throwaway track or 3 on it.
Yeah, that is interesting. He's funny. You talk about having so many songs. It's like, gosh, how many Johnny Cash albums have there been since Johnny Cash died?
Right.
Is that inherently a good thing? I don't know. I would think you'd want to hear what an artist wants to say, but at the flip side, the artist probably wants to put out a product. The world has changed so much in the last 24 months. I mean, certainly the last 12 months, but even going back the last couple of years, both like politically and then, racial tensions in America. And then you had the pandemic. And I'm sure the kind of album that he would have released a year ago or 18 months ago is totally different than what it is now.
Exactly. That's exactly kind of where my mind goes on it, was that, I had people that texting me being like, hey, like when everything was happening with all of the protests this summer, Kendrick needs to drop something, like the people need to hear from him. Because To Pimp a Butterfly, songs like All Right kind of became the anthem of those movements at the time, and still are in a lot of ways. And I thought to myself, I wonder if Kendrick really just made a totally different type of album. Like it's been rumored that the album he's been working on is more of like a rock album than even a hip hop album. And I wonder if he felt like, I don't have it in me to go out here and make another To Pimp a Butterfly. And if I put this out right now, it's not going to be the right moment. But then also there's been, the guy's a family man. And this is something also that's pretty cool about Kendrick is you don't know anything about his personal life. Like you have to kind of really look into it, right? We all know that Kanye is getting divorced right now and everything else happens in his whole world 24/7. And that's with most big celebrities. But Kendrick is always kind of, you never, I don't know how he does it, but he hides it. I mean, we do know that he's like married to his high school sweetheart. They just had their first kid last year, but that's never in the news. That's never a part of his narrative.
Well, that's not dramatic for the news.
Right.
People don't care
Exactly.
about people that are faithful and stay together
Yeah,
and high
precisely.
school sweethearts. Like, that's not exciting.
Right.
I do think it's funny in that Kanye is the epitome of celebrity culture, in my opinion. Like the kind of worship that follows him, and then the obsession that you find in the media and stuff like that, which he loves. I mean, he definitely embraces it. But yeah, we were talking when I was doing a bit of research before we were recording, and I thought to myself, Kendrick's like the anti-Kanye, which is why I've already made one Kanye reference this podcast, because he's like the reverse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
in a lot
and
of
to go
ways.
back to go back a little bit, what you said about, where is he? He's been putting out albums, consistently, and then all of a sudden with this big break. I think that speaks interestingly to where the music industry is right now, because I mean, I can remember a time when there was probably a 2-year gap between artists' next album. They'd run singles off that album for a year and a half, and it'd run the radio, and then they'd start working on the next one and get it out. And then there was a time where it felt like every year artists are putting out new albums, especially in the pop space, pop radio, top 40. Now, like right before COVID, it's like every 3 months, some of your big names are dropping new albums, like back to back to back. And you can't hardly digest one before they're shoving another one at you. And it's got 2 songs on top 40 radio. And so like, I'm thinking like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, like these people are popping them out. And you're like, I didn't even listen to the last one. Like what's happening? And they're like, they're flooding the market with themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like they've got 3 and 4 songs on the top 40 charts from 2 or 3 different albums.
Well, they like making money.
Right. Exactly. Part of me is like, okay, how much of that is you just trying to stay relevant and compete and make money because your name's out there? Like what are you actually pouring into this album to make me care about it in 10 years? Because some of the best albums, some of the best artists and music that I still listen to, and you go back to even, the 60s and the 70s that people continue to claim are the best musicians of the last century, are people who waited 2 years, 3 years and cultivated that album before they put it out. And they really poured their heart and their soul into it. So it speaks volumes to, if Kendrick's going to put out a great album that means something, I don't need it right now.
Right.
I need it whenever it's ready.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I think when, I was thinking about like, what are words I would have to like the community of people who are fans of Kendrick. And that was one of them right there. Right. Like, no, you don't deserve another album from Kendrick. Right. Let the man live his life. If he wants to spend a few years getting to know his newborn child without having to go on a nationwide, worldwide tour for a new album that he dropped, then he gets to do that. We don't get to demand anything out of him. And when it does come, it's going to be great. Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and Damn have all, like his last 3 albums, are all listed by Rolling Stone magazine as in the top 500 albums of all time across any genre. So why would he put out anything that's not going to be, that caliber?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a good point. We always kind of end like on the same 2 questions. What do you think? What is some words of advice, some critique that maybe you would have, maybe for the community? I mean, you kind of briefly hinted on this, on a little bit of impatience, but what are some other things that you think are areas of improvement?
Yeah, good question. Well, I'll start off by saying something I love about the community of people who are fans of Kendrick's music, which is, really everybody. It's hard to listen to it and not be a fan when you recognize greatness. But I love how people approach Kendrick's music like literature. When you sit down in a class in college, and you read a book and you discuss things through, what do we call it? The something process.
Scientific method.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't know why I can't think of this word, but it's just like how you go back and forth in discussing a work of art, a work of literature, and the professor isn't looking for you to find the truth or what even necessarily what the writer meant, but they're trying to get you to evoke, like, what do you see here? What can you pull out of this? What themes are there? And I think one thing that I see in the people who are super fans of Kendrick is this they almost over ascribe their interpretation onto Kendrick. Right? This is what he means, and there's this hyper theory, and if you link this song from this album to this one 3 years ago, he used this word and this. I mean, there's numerology. It's almost like they're reading the book of Revelation.
Wow.
The second coming of Christ in Kendrick's music. And I think, just chill out a little bit, right? And it's okay to find something beautiful in it that Kendrick didn't intend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then be patient. Let the dude live his life, and we'll get the album that we need. Also, along those lines, don't forget what he's given us already. We don't need another protest album if he's given us one of the greatest protest albums of all time. It's been 2 years, but I think that's a part of the time that we live in, Reagan. Like you were saying, everyone's dropping something like that, and what happened 2 days ago is old news already. And I kind of find it incredible that Kendrick, like his delayed pattern of sending out these albums, almost invites you to sit with it, right? And how he refuses to make a part 2 version of any album. Everything's going to be totally new. He kind of forces you to sit with it and really take it in. Over the years, his music's come to mean different things to me than it's meant in the past. And so, yeah, that's what I would say to the community.
No, that's good. I mean, I certainly think like gratefulness and patience can be applied to most things, but one we've never gotten that I do think applies to most fandoms is the ownership problem. Man, fans like to claim ownership.
Yeah.
And you know what you are is a fan of the owner of something. You yourself are not the owner.
Or you're a fan of yourself.
Yeah, that could be more vanity coming through than anything. So I think that's
right, because she's a huge Star Wars fan, and I only watched Star Wars as an adult. I never got into it, and I think it was like the holiness thing. It was just like not one of those movies we were allowed to watch as a kid. But
magic and the Force.
So my interpretation is that, hey, listen, Darth Maul would beat up Darth Vader because Darth Maul can do flips and Darth Vader can barely move. And my wife is like, no.
Did you see Rogue One?
That's hilarious. We might have to have your wife on to talk about Star Wars.
When she finishes with law school.
Yeah, she's probably way more important things to do than that.
Yeah, give on the 5th, or graduate law school on the 15th, give birth on the 26th, take the bar exam on July 27th. Yeah, she's got.
That's a crazy 2 months.
Yeah. Maybe 2022. Let her breathe.
The other one is, what does the future hold? What do you see? What do you see coming over the next couple of years?
I see an album dropping any month now. It wasn't just Kendrick that didn't drop an album last year. It was kind of like the whole of his label TDE. And one of the creative director, this guy Dave Free, had left. Him and Kendrick had started this other media marketing company called PG Lang that is kind of mysterious. And people are like, is this a record label? Is he doing his own thing? Or everything had kind of been on this delay. And now we're starting to see some records drop. SZA, who's like a R&B artist on their label, dropped, a project. And you're starting to hear more rumblings from inside the community. So I think we see an album drop very, very soon, maybe the next 1 to 2 months. And
wow.
Yeah. And I think that we see something a little bit more jazz and rock influenced, like I kind of hinted to already. I think that what we see is a continued argument that will eventually break down to who is the greatest rapper of all time, Kendrick or Drake. And it will be people, I know it sounds crazy, but it will be people who consider commercial success the most important factor.
Yeah.
And it will be people who consider like the artistry the most important factor, right? I had this argument with a friend who is a huge Drake fan, and Drake's got a lot of great music, but we were arguing about who's a better, artist, Drake or Kendrick. And he said, look, Drake has sold way more than Kendrick. I'm like, yeah, Walmart sells way more clothes than Louis Vuitton.
Hey.
Like,
But are they better?
you know what I mean? Is volume our key metric? And he was like, yeah. That makes Walmart the best. He died on the hill.
You bet, man. Yep, Walmart's better clothes.
But I think that we moved towards seeing that. Right now, people are kind of stuck because there was such a vacuum of greatness in hip hop after Tupac and Biggie died. Mm-hmm. And they died around the same time. So you see this vacuum of like, who's the best rapper of all time, Biggie or Tupac? I like Biggie more than Tupac, but Biggie shouldn't even be in the conversation, really. He had 2 albums ever. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's like, he just doesn't have enough work to know how he would have navigated the change of sound in the early 2000s, how he would have lasted. Mm-hmm. And when you compare that against somebody like Kendrick over the next 5 to 10 years, he'll continue to probably put out albums. In my mind, it'll have to be undeniable. And as long as he doesn't change, right? As long as he's innovative with each project, if his next 3 are acclaimed like his last 3, who could say he's not the greatest? It'd be crazy.
Mm-hmm. I'm also Team Biggie. I like Tupac, but I'm a Biggie fan.
He's more fun.
Yeah.
I'll have to go do some research, and you can ask me in a couple episodes what I think.
My favorite Biggie Smalls line ever is Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. When I was starting broke, man, couldn't picture this. 50-inch screen, money green leather sofa, got 2 rides, a limousine with a chauffeur. Just because to me, that's what I wanted growing up. I grew up poor, and you know what? Biggie had a Sega Genesis and a Nintendo. And to me, that was success.
Yeah.
I love it. So, I think that's a hopeful note to end on. Yeah. We give everyone the opportunity to plug whatever they got going on. Colten, what do you want? Followers? We have a solid 42 people that listen to this podcast.
38 to 40.
I love it. I don't sell anything on my Instagram, but I try to post realistically encouraging things. So if you're interested in that, check me out on Instagram at Colten Barnaby, Colten with an E, and that's it.
That's good, man.
Cool. I do have a question. We might leave this one, might take it out. Your work, like what you do, is that locally based? Are you licensed locally, or is that stuff you can do across the board if people need those services?
Great question. We're nationwide. Our heart with what we do with my work is to help Main Street America, middle class America, get their finances in order and learn some of the financial concepts that should be taught in schools but aren't, right? Mm-hmm. Like how to get out of debt and stay out of debt, right? How credit can work for you and against you, how to get term insurance, how to invest the difference, how to start a Roth IRA, how to invest in low cost mutual funds. Mm-hmm. And we do that for people. A lot of folks we sit down with, we open their first Roth IRA for them. And we have no minimums. A lot of places usually it's about a $5,000 minimum of investment to open a Roth IRA with an advisor. I open up Roths for people weekly who are putting $25 a month into it, right? I'm going to make 6 cents commission on the year and spend 3 hours with them because I believe,
awesome.
I believe in what we do. And so, anybody anywhere in the country that's looking to do that. And then also expanding. So I have 45 reps in 15 different states. So anybody who's looking to make extra income part-time by helping people in a meaningful way, hit me up.
Cool. Is there an email address specifically to do that? Or
actually you can go to winningstreak.team, www.winningstreak.team, and look at what we do on there, schedule an appointment with us, and love to talk to you.
Well, thanks, Colten.
We appreciate it, man.
Good to sit down and talk with you.
Good to meet you, Christian and Regan. Really good to see you again, brother. Y'all have a great day.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, man. You too. Thank you for listening to Fantastic People. Please rate and subscribe wherever you find your podcast, and follow us on social media. That's at Fantastic People Pod on Facebook, at Fantastic_People Pod on Instagram, and at Fantastic People, no E, on Twitter. We'd like to say thank you to Alex Edmondson for our artwork. We hope to see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.